Hi everyone, we've got something big happening this weekend. Saturn, that massive planet who commands respect and authority, he is moving into the sign of Aries on the 25th of May. Now, for some of you in the world, it's going to be the 24th, but for us in the UK, 25th of May, early hours of the morning. I think it's 4:36 a.m. And he's going to move into Aries, but he won't be there for very long. He's going to give Aries a bit of a taster of what to expect. But he'll move in and then he will retrograde. So part of his time in Aries is actually going to be retrograde. And part of the retrograde will then involve moving back into Pisces. And that will happen on the 1st of September. And then retrograding back through Pisces, kind of going over old ground, giving us that further window of opportunity to really take stock of what Saturn has been teaching us and those lessons and so on. He'll then Saturn direct on the 28th of November. We'll move forward and we'll finally move back into Aries fully on the 13th or 14th of February 2026, depending on where you are in the world. For us in the UK, it's going to happen on 14th of February. Happy Valentine's Day in advance from Saturn. And personally, for me, I'm a Pisces. So it's going to be an amazing Valentine's gift for me because he will finally be out of my sign. Brilliant. But alas, I jest with that because regardless of the fact he's been in Pisces, the messages, the lessons still apply to all of us. So even those of you that are not Piscean, for his time in Pisces, which by the way has been since the 7th of March 2023, he has been teaching us lessons to get in line with our spiritual truth, that spiritual integrity that we hold within. So he has brought that structure and somewhat uncomfortable structure to a sign that really isn't, very good with boundaries. So it's been quite intense. The lessons have been quite intense. The tests have been quite intense, but it's all for a purpose. It's all to get us in alignment with our soul's truth. So that applies to everybody, but Pisces have particularly had this quite intensely over the past 3 years. So Aries, you're going to get a taster of this when he moves into your sign on the 25th of May or the 24th, depending on where you are in the world, okay? I've obviously got the chart to show you, and I've got another chart to show you, which is actually the moment that he retrogrades back into Pisces, just to see what's going on there. And then again, when he fully moves into Aries on the 14th of February, again, for us in the UK, apply your own time zones as appropriate, of course. So yes, we need to take stock of what Saturn has been showing us, because all of that groundwork we've been doing on a soul level, especially with a lot of the illuminations that have been going on recently, we have been understanding and remembering who we are. We have been understanding what our soul's truth is, and we've needed to detach from cycles that have not been serving us and close out karmic patterns and karmic cycles. And again, Saturn rules karma, so very heavy on these kind of karmic lessons that have been coming up. And again, Pisces, the spiritual, ethereal, the soul's truth, getting us in touch with our intuition. All of this has been a part of it, but it might have felt uncomfortable. Now, I will say, as I always say in these astrology reports, it's not just as simple as saying Saturn's moving into Aries and it means this. That is a meaning, brilliant. But we look at the whole chart. We look at the other aspects to get the bigger picture. And of course, this is just based on the energy of the planets and the planetary bodies at that time. It's not going to show you your own unique chart against what's going on. That's going to give you a deeper insight, and that would be something to be done within a reading, of course. And if you've got access to do that yourself, brilliant. It's going to give you an idea of how that energy could be playing out for you. But collectively, it can certainly give you an indication of what's going on. And if you've got an awareness of what planets you've got in that particular sign, in that particular house, it's going to show you where you might need to take stock of things, okay? And what you're being taught at this time. Because remember, Saturn is a great teacher. Yes, he wants us to get things done. He wants us to kind of remove emotion from things because it's very Capricornian energy. It's very focused and determined. And sometimes we need that. But it's been quite harsh in Pisces because that is more about flow. That is more about, let's just flow and just love everything and dream what we want to dream. Yes, there's a time and a place for that. But Saturn is wanting us to really get in alignment with our soul's truth. And that does rely on that connection to our intuition and that ethereal essence, that source energy within. But it also requires the grit and determination that Saturn can support us with. So he is a great teacher, one that should be respected, of course. And this movement into Aries is a bit of foreshadowing of what to expect when he then moves in on Valentine's Day for us in the UK next year. Okay, so let's pull up the chart, okay, and I'll show you what's going on at the point of him ingressing into Aries. So bear with me whilst I pull that up for you. I've got a few charts to show you. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. Okay, right, here we go. I'll just move closer to the screen. Okay, so here is the chart at the time that Saturn ingresses into Aries. So as I said, for us in the UK, 25th of May, 4:36 a.m. British Summer Time. So some of you in the world, it's going to happen on the 24th of May. Okay, but 25th of May, we're closing out May. We're now in Gemini season. So we are in a different season, and that's actually allowing us to maybe look into things, investigate, be a bit curious about things, but also open up our communication on a soul level, because the sun is there in Gemini. It's mutable energy. At the time that Saturn moves into Aries, the moon will be in Taurus. So there is something about, wanting to maybe feel a certain way. It's that feel good factor. And certainly within our material world, that our physical reality, we know what we want and we know what's good for us. We know what we like in that respect and what feels good to us. So this is all in order to help us move forward. Okay, Saturn in Aries is bringing that sort of empowered energy, I would say, because Aries is a very dominant sign. Aries is a cardinal Aries is that fire energy, but that could bring that gusto to really get things moving. So it's a good thing. But what I also feel from this is there's certainly, and there has been for some time with all of these different conjunctions going on, this awakening. And it's a massive collective awakening that's going on at the moment, and it's awakening to the truth. It's the veil lifting, and we've got Neptune there close by, as you can see if I zoom in. Saturn will be at 0 degrees, obviously, that's the point of ingress, and Neptune is just there at 1 degrees. So Neptune is close by. Ceres is also close by at 2 degrees, planting the seeds of the reality that we're wanting to experience from a place of the self. What do we want? The Neptune is kind of like revealing things that have been hidden, because Neptune rules Pisces, and that is the subconscious, hidden, mystical, ethereal house. And it's very much about bringing things to light, the veil lifting. And I've said this in previous astrology reports. And Saturn is almost now giving it a bit of a kick, because it's like, right, let's get things done. I've spent some time in Pisces, and I've taught you through these uncomfortable challenges and lessons and all of this. I've shown you where, how, why you need to get in touch with your soul's truth. And now this is about you as the leader of your life and following what you want to pursue from a place of the self. And there is a lot of heavy Aries energy here. If I zoom back out, you can see that on the left-hand side, there is a lot in Aries now. We had for a time a lot in Pisces, because we were closing things out at the end of that astrological year, moving into the new. So the theme, and I've said this in previous astrology reports as well, the theme of endings and beginnings continues. And it will be continuing, because Saturn will be in Aries, as I mentioned, but he will retrograde back into Pisces. He'll go back over some old ground. He will go back and allow us to revisit things to make sure we're in alignment with our soul's truth. So this is almost like a bit of a test in itself for us to say, okay, he's in Aries now. Are we doing things that we want to do from that sovereign perspective of the self? And if there's any areas where we're not, and of course there's a bigger picture, as we know, Chiron is in Aries, we're healing our sovereignty. So there's still part of that to be processed. But when he retrogrades back, further introspection on that, he moves back into Pisces. Right, okay, let's get this addressed. Where is it that you're still not connecting in with your intuition? Where is it that you are still needing to understand what your soul is telling you? And what is in alignment with your soul? Do you need to put boundaries in place here? What about the rules you've got for yourself? You know, and I'm, by the way, I'm being Saturn right now, okay? So I'm being quite authoritative, but you get what I'm saying. This is a chance, an opportunity for us to almost get a bit of a test run at this, because, you know, he's in Aries, and we're awakening to all of this. The veil is lifting, and we know we've got to do things. Are we going to do them? Cardinal energy gets things going, gets things started. So Saturn is going to really want to propel that and build up that momentum. So a great support for us, but it might feel like, whoa, we've got to get things moving now. And if we can't, for whatever reason, it highlights things that we need to address. Great, that's part of our healing journey. This is why we go through all of this. This is life. We're here to experience life. But closing out of cycles is definitely a part of this, and I'll come on to the South Node in a bit. But generally, with the theme of endings and beginnings, we are having to close things out to start new things. And we're closing out patterns where perhaps we have done things for other people and not put ourselves first. That could be one thing. And there might be many other things. But yes, we've got in touch with our soul's truth. Is that person or that group of people aligned with my values anymore because I've evolved? No, I've got to detach from them then. You know, so it's actually looking at it from that really sort of sovereign leadership perspective, I would say. And Venus is in Aries as well at this point. So, you know, she's reminding us of that dominant feminine energy when it comes to our values, and also acknowledging our worth as a sovereign being, somebody who can attract and achieve what they want if we believe it. And we can create what we want. You know, Venus is that Empress type energy of creation. So it's very powerful energy. There's a lot going on in Aries at that point, but we're definitely awakening to it with Neptune being so close by, and perhaps even, you know, revealing areas where we've sabotaged ourselves. So now we've got to look at what we want to do, and perhaps we've realized, because we've got in touch with our soul's truth while Saturn was in Pisces and the other stuff going on, that, oh, actually, yeah, I should have maybe followed that for myself, but I was too busy worrying about what other people wanted me to do, or I was doing things for them because I'm a people pleaser, and, you know, I want to put others before me, which is, by the way, a very noble thing. It's being of service, but we need to draw a line here, because it's absolutely about what we need to now pursue going forward. And there could be that awakening to that, the veil lifting with that, and understanding, right, okay, this is my path. It's nobody else's path. This is my path. So, okay, this is what we've got. I've mentioned about the moon being in Taurus. Okay, so yeah, emotionally grounded in what we actually feel good about as part of this, understanding what does feel good to us in our physical reality from an emotional home perspective, and the stuff that's coming up as well that we might need to look at. Okay, there is a fixed energy to Taurus because it's a fixed sign, so there can be some stubbornness. So just to bear that in mind, that of course things might come up, and there might be some stubbornness as part of that you're awakening to, or it could simply be not wanting to accept the truth that's coming up. Okay, so take that as it resonates. But remember, Chiron is in Aries. It's part of our healing journey. And Chiron, by the way, is part of a yod, which I'll come on to very shortly. Okay, that's enough of Aries. On the other side, what I was drawn to intuitively is the fact that we've got this energy in Scorpio, and all of these asteroids are retrograde at this time. And there is an exact conjunction between Juno and Lilith. Okay, so that's feminine energy, but Lilith is the shadow feminine energy. So there is kind of this coming together of light and shadow. And when we look at Lilith in terms of deep desires, and she's in Scorpio, so this is coming from the depths of, maybe we've even hidden it or suppressed it from ourselves, but also any shadow wounds coming up about what we want, or what we're trying to create, those shadow wounds that have maybe prevented us from doing that previously. And then Juno, that's about love, marriage, commitment. And I very much see it as being a commitment sign and an asteroid that relates to soul contracts. Okay, so that coming together of light and shadow to understand what it is we truly desire, what we might have been suppressing from ourselves, and what we've been committing to. Have we been committing to the right things? Are there contracts and soul contracts that do need to be transformed in some way? Because that's Scorpio energy, there's that deep transformation that might be needed. Okay, so that's to bear in mind. But it feels like, there's heavy energy in Aries to empower us with that Aries dominant, bold, assertive energy in a good way. And there's the deep energy going on, especially because they're all retrograde. It's like introspection city. But the nice merging together of that light and shadow when it comes to the feminine energy of what we're trying to create. But we have to be honest with what it is we want. And we have to be honest with what we want to commit to. Contracts we want to be part of, soul contracts and otherwise. Okay. So you'll see in the middle that there's a beautiful shape that is actually formed from all of the lines that I've made. Now, if you're familiar with my astrology reports, you'll know why I do this, but there's a lot more going on because this will show the aspects between the planets and the asteroids and so on, as well as the sun and the moon. But I'm particularly drawn, or I'm guided to certain ones to then be able to show you, and I go into it, and this is based on my intuitive interpretation of the astrological data, okay, and what I feel, and there might be messages coming through. Now, the interesting thing for me, and you're not going to be able to see it because I've drawn, but basically, when I zoomed in, there were no aspects whatsoever from Saturn. So you're going to look at that and say, oh, it looks like that's pointing there. Well, that's because that's where the line is for the other things, because there's so much crammed into that space. But even so, with no direct aspects, I'm still looking at the closeness that Saturn is to Neptune. There's only 1 degree difference. So take it as it resonates, okay? But I feel very much that energy is lingering around for this anyway. So no aspects. If I look at that just initially and I think, right, it's almost like a void. It's like going into the void. So he's going to move into Aries and it's like, oh, what do we do now then? A bit like that. That's what it feels like. But because Neptune is there to almost, I say illuminate, but I mean awaken in that way, what we need to see so that we can get to work with Saturn's support, or so that Saturn can show us and we can see what he's showing us. Okay. But we might feel initially like it's a bit of a void, a bit of a, oh, okay. It's almost like taking a bit of a breath. He's out of Pisces. Oh, yeah. Right. Now what we got to do? It's a bit like that. And knowing also that he's going to be coming back. So it's kind of like the Pisces era is not done yet, but you know what I'm saying? And I'm passionate about this because I am a Pisces and I've been feeling this for the past 3 years, okay? And I'm sure other Pisces that are awake to this are going to resonate with this as well. So if we take what's going on with Neptune and Ceres, but we know Saturn is close by, what there is here is there is a sesqui square, okay, that's going from there to Mars in Leo, okay, and also is going to Poseidon. So if I look at Neptune and Poseidon, well, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? Because of the connection there. But what came through to me, and it was channeled because I was looking at this chart and I'm like, that's really interesting. And then all of a sudden, Spirit gave me shedding of the alter ego. So this is what's going on. This is what it's enabling us to do. It's kickstarting this period of Saturn in Aries. We know that day by day things are going to move. There's going to be other messages. As I say, it's the bigger picture. But this is almost giving us a theme for this time, okay? And shedding of the alter ego is part of this because I was given that message. Okay, so that is very key here, and things are going to get churned up for us to see and understand, for us to shed that alter ego. And by that I mean this kind of concept that we are somebody who we're actually not. And that feels extremely profound. Okay, so this is going to be a big deal moving forward for us in our personal journey, and then wider, the ripple effects within the collective. Okay. Now, Poseidon and Mars meet up in a square. So there is a bit of a challenging energy here, because do we really want to see that we're not who we thought we were? Do we really want to see that? Could feel a bit challenging. So we might need some courage because of the Leo energy, and we might need to be seen. We might need to show up as who we are, and that takes courage. And that square is also going, by the way, to Juno and Lilith. So that's the masculine versus the feminine energy. So a bit of that challenging energy between the creation, the nurturing, and also the action taking. Saturn is going to empower us to move forward, but we are in that void moment. So this is where the challenge comes in, because we've got to address what might have been holding us back in terms of what we wanted to create and our deep desires, in order to then take the action. But to do that, part of the process is understanding what is coming up to be seen, lifting of the veil, remember, and for us to then go, yeah, okay, I'm not that version of myself I thought I was, you know, and that's a good thing. It's understanding who you are as an authentic soul, not some carbon copy of somebody else or somebody who you believed you should be to please other people, that kind of thing. Okay, it's awakening to the truth of who you are. And it might be uncomfortable, but this is meant to empower to move forward in that cardinal energy, align with values and say, yeah, that's who I am. And I am not going to tolerate anything that does not align with me anymore. I'm committed to what I want to create. This is my path, and I'm going to have the courage to own it and show up in that way. That's what I felt from that, and a lot of that was channeled. Okay, so it's going to resonate for somebody, even if it's just one person out there, it's going to resonate, but I feel it's wider. It does feel wider to me. I mentioned about the yod, and I will come on to that. First of all, I'm going to talk about these sextiles, which is harmonious, the purple lines, if they show up as purple on the screen. So there is a sextile going across to Pluto and to Uranus. Well, what a surprise there. This is all about change and transformation. Mic drop moment. If you've not already been aware of this, I don't know where you've been, because this is about profound transformation. We are moving into a new reality. And our physical reality is changing. So we're adapting to this. We're understanding why it's changing, because we're changing. Remember, our external reality is a reflection of our inner condition. So we are creating the change through the lifting of the veil, through the seeds we want to plant for our path, our journey, our life. Okay? And in relation to that, with this yod, that's a finger of God in the chart, okay, and it's pointing towards the south node in Virgo. But at the base, we've got Pallas in Aquarius, and we've got Chiron in Aries. So our healing journey, healing our sovereignty and becoming the leader of our own life, as well as with Pallas, that which we're trying to fight for in relation to our new reality, plus the strategy we need to put things in motion, is supporting the detachment of cycles that are not serving us. It's also enabling us to become more adaptable to surrendering and flowing, because the North Node is, of course, Pisces at the moment. So we're needing to surrender, and we're needing to connect with our intuition, and we need to detach from the Virgo energy of being too much of a perfectionist about how things should be, how things should look. The difficulty here is we've got the moon in Taurus, and the moon in Taurus is quite high quality, you know, has to be like this because I won't accept anything less. There's a good message with that, because it means that you know your worth. okay, from an emotional perspective. But this is about understanding that sometimes we need to just release expectation of outcome and allow things to be. So we know we're creating a new path for ourselves. We want certain things, but it might show up in a different way to what we expect. That's the message I'm trying to say with that. So we need to kind of release expectation of outcome and detach from that. Try not to be too much of a perfectionist or try to control the outcome of things, but at the same time use that as a bit of a springboard, because we like to be organized, we like to feel in control of our own life, and that's good, that's fine, and that helps us understand what we want. But we need to just release expectation of outcome. Okay, and I got a ringing in my ear at that point. So absolutely, it's probably a message for me as well. I've got a lot of Virgo in my chart, as well as being a Pisces. So I'm constantly like that, folks. Push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. 1 foot in the 5D, 1 foot in the 3D. But that is essentially what, North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo is. It's kind of like, we're moving more in the direction of 4D, 5D, and I say away from the 3D. We're in the 3D because we've got to navigate this reality, okay? But it's aligning more with the ethereal self rather than materialistic things, okay, is the point I'm trying to make there. But essentially, it's all about detachment anyway because of the South Node. So we're moving away from the South Node in the direction of the North Node. So we are learning things from what's been, but leaving it in the past. So we can apply that energy and say, okay, that was great, that served a purpose at that point, but now I need to flow more and move in the direction that is more in alignment with my spiritual essence, with my soul, with my intuition, that inner compass. And it's closing out, karmic cycles where it has been too controlling, karmic cycles that have been a bit too, right, I'm going to stipulate what it has to be, what it has to look like, only liking things like that, only liking people who look like that. This is ridiculous. So it's moving away from that, okay? And embracing the soul's truth, because fake is not going to cut it anymore. This is about authenticity, okay? So the yod, the finger of God, is pointing towards the South Node. Detach from that, okay? And that's going to heal the sovereignty as well, because you're going to step more into that leadership role of knowing what you want and detaching from what you don't want, and also aligning with that which you're trying to fight for in that warrior capacity with Palace there as well, okay? But South Node is also in the grand Earth trine, if you like, and I've drawn it even though one of the points relates to the midheaven of the chart, okay? But I was guided to do it. So we've got Uranus there in Taurus, by the way, who will soon be in the next sign, and I'll come on to that a bit later. But we've also got the South Node. So it's Earth, because we've got Capricorn as the midheaven. Now that does support, and this is probably why I was guided to do it, it does support the Saturn energy, because Saturn rules Capricorn. And we know that that's all about, inner authority, boundaries and rules, and also work. Okay, so this could come into play with work as well, but definitely about inner authority. And we need to have that inner authority of what we're willing to stand for in our life. This is very much about reality-based stuff going on because of the earth energy. And the cardinal energy is Capricorn. So the midheaven, if you think of that as being the crown chakra of this chart, or even wider, like the crown chakra of the cosmos, and that inspiration is coming from the Capricornian energy. So it's supporting Saturn by saying, look, there needs to be focus on, rules. There needs to be focus on boundaries. There needs to be focus on being authoritative in your own life. And that is going to support the change happening in your physical reality, Uranus in Taurus, and the detachment from cycles not serving you in your reality, where you've tried to control the outcome, or it has to be a certain way, South Node in Virgo, okay? So that's working in harmony, but it's receiving the insight, if you like, from the Capricornian side, which means removing emotion from it in order to get the job done, okay? So that is just a bit of an overview of Saturn in Aries, okay, at the time that Saturn moves in, because we know the planets are going to move, There's going to be different aspects. There's going to be different messages, but it just gives you an insight of the key themes. So a reminder, 4:36 a.m. British summertime for us in the UK, 25th of May. So this coming Sunday, but it will be the 24th for people in America, for example. So apply your own time zone as appropriate. Okay. I'm pretty sure I've got the chart against the UK's chart just to show you, which is something that you can do with your own natal chart. Or if you have a reading with me, for example, this is what I would do is put your chart against it. So for context, the UK's chart is in the middle, and then what I've just shown you is the outer wheel. And I've not drawn everything on there, but you can see that Saturn is there in the 9th house. Okay, so it's the 9th house of learning, discovery. And also, you know, I feel it's very much connected to motivation as well, because Sag energy can be very motivational, especially through what we've experienced, because it motivates us to do what we need to do, but also can inspire other people who are on that journey. You know, different experiences maybe, but it's very motivating and inspiring, because you know that deeper meaning of and you've probably seen lots of posts about it, about being the light in the world, and how your light can then enable other people to activate their light, and it has a ripple effect. So it's very motivational and inspirational. That's when we finally realize who we are. You know, it's that shedding of the alter ego that I was saying before, that was given to me by spirit. So there is something in that. But you can see also, and I've put purple circles just to remind me that that was really the sextiles. So when I was looking at Neptune and Ceres in sextile to Uranus and Pluto, well, it's very much to do with relationships, with people, places, things, and connections with others. Excuse me. So there is an emphasis here definitely on the relationships we have with people around us. And what we're learning about that, the veil lifting on that, and looking at alignment. And this is really interesting because a moth has just appeared. Deep transformation, amazing sign from spirit. Thank you so much. There we go. That is a sign of death and rebirth, if ever you wanted one. So thank you for that. So yeah, it's about profound transformation. So there is something significant about our relationships with other people at this time. That are transforming, but we need to also bear in mind it does relate to our relationship with places and also things, because we might have outgrown a job, we might have outgrown a place. That is definitely something here because of the 7th house with Pluto there, but because of the 7th and the 11th house there with the sextiles, you know, the veil lifting in relation to our relationships with other people, connections with other people, and how they're changing or need to change to align us in that way. Okay, so that void sort of feeling of being in the void, oh, what do we do now? And then suddenly having this awakening to needing to shed the alter ego, and do these people align with me anymore? That can be uncomfortable because it's the familiar, but actually as you've evolved it might not be the familiar anymore. Okay, so it's bearing that in mind. And the yod, that's the only other thing I've drawn on here, pointing towards the south node with Chiron and Pallas at the base. Well, it's pointing towards the 3rd house of expression. So it's very much about, yeah, we want to detach from cycles and patterns where we've maybe not been able to express ourselves fully in terms of what we want. But also we need to understand that, okay, if we need to surrender more to like releasing control of the outcome, things like that, to not be afraid to actually speak up about that. And certainly, and I say this because there is that conjunction with 1 degree off with the natal Lilith there, you know, having these kind of desires about how things should be in quite a rigid way, even though Virgo is mutable. The perfectionism and the control aspects of it can make it feel quite rigid in that way, because it has to be a certain way. So it's uncovering the expression, and it feels like it's to do with our self-expression. You know, what are we trying to achieve from being too rigid? I'll use that term, from being too rigid about how things should be. What are we learning about ourselves? You know, we need to release control, and our expression is part of that. But also because thoughts come into this as well with the 3rd house. So we do need to understand that how we talk to ourselves, how we communicate with ourselves. You know, I'm wearing this top, it says kind. We need to be kind, not only to other people, but to ourselves as well, as we're going through this process. And as we are detaching from certain cycles, we need to honor the shadow feminine and understand what she's telling us through her expression, third house, but also what we're saying to ourselves about these things. Okay. And then eighth house is in the mix, and 10th house. So definitely to do with power and authority. Okay. But that can propel us forward to detach then if we've got that strength at the base. Okay. I won't labor the point on that anymore. It's just to give you some insight. But the next chart I want to just quickly show you is when Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces. Okay. So that's happening on the 1st of September for us in the UK at 9:07 a.m. Okay. So here we have got Saturn, so you can see they're 29 degrees, so back in Pisces at that point, final degree, final minute. And there is a sesqui square going across to Poseidon and Lilith, who are now in a conjunction. I don't know if you just heard that. Somebody tooting. There might be an alert there for something. So yeah, so this is about perhaps what Poseidon has been churning up when it comes to what we've suppressed. And now, because Pisces is going back into Pisces, so I say Pisces, Saturn is going back into Pisces, and understanding that whatever's been shown to us about what we've suppressed, but from a deep place, because it's still Scorpio energy, we now need to look at. So Saturn is retrograding back. It's still introspection time, because that's what happens in a retrograde. But in Pisces, it's again that further revisiting of the soul's truth. So what's coming up that I've suppressed? Why is that happening? What's my soul trying to tell me with that? So now Saturn can help us learn the lessons with that. Okay, that's the point I was trying to make. But my mistake of saying Pisces into Pisces, actually Pisceans out there will know what I mean, because it's felt like we've had to really go into our own skin. Like literally for the past few years with all of this. So yeah, it's a good thing we're getting this window of opportunity to revisit, because it means that anything that's come up during his brief time in Aries then, and as he's retrograded back, this is enabling us to now understand, okay, what have we really got to look at now? Because, you know, that period of time from the 1st of September, when he moves back into Pisces, he's obviously going to retrograde back, and then 28th of November, station direct, and he'll move forward again. But then it won't be until, again, 14th of February for the UK, 13th for other places, when he moves back to Aries. So we've still got a period of time that he's going to sit in Pisces to enable us to then, you know, work on the soul's truth and alignment with the soul's truth before he, you know, before his time in Pisces is done. So we need to look at this, okay? But it could feel challenging. There is a trine, however, to Vesta, and obviously Juno is close by there. But the sacred flame, understanding because of what's been coming up that we might have suppressed, does that involve our sacred flame in terms of what sparks that flame of inspiration for us? Have we been pursuing that, or have we been suppressing that as well? So this is about activating that, because there's a trine. The challenge might be understanding what we have suppressed and why, because we're now seeing it, it's coming up to be seen. But the trine is saying, look, we can activate this and we can move forward now, because that's going to get you in alignment with spiritual truth. If you understand what your sacred flame energy actually is and what it is you're trying to create, you know, from that place of femininity, regardless of gender. Okay. So at this point, the moon will be in Sag. So there will be motivation within our feelings, because it's almost like, right, Saturn is now back in Pisces. Let's get our emotions in check here and understand that what is going to be shown to us now is a further window of opportunity for us to learn, because Sag is all about learning as well. So it's learning the lessons of Saturn this period of time whilst he's with Pisces, to really make the most of that opportunity, okay? And to be motivated through that. Saturn will be in sextile to Uranus, okay? So there's still that support with change, and Neptune will also be as well. Neptune is retrograde at that point. So we need to be aware of any kind of deceptive energy, because we look at the shadow aspects there. okay, or self-sabotage. This is about changing and transforming. And you might have noticed Uranus at that time is in Gemini, because Uranus will move in to Gemini on the 7th of July. Okay, so he's going to move into Gemini on the 7th of July. And then on the 6th of September, so not long after this, actually, he will retrograde. And part of his retrograde, he will go back into Taurus. So that's another big planet moving into a sign and then retrograding back into another one. Endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings. It's been continuing. Okay. You'll also see Jupiter is in Cancer, because Jupiter moves into Cancer on the 9th of June. So not long after Saturn's moved into Aries. So again, big planet moving into a new sign. Massive change going on. Okay. There is a quincunx from Saturn across to Mercury, and Mercury will be in Leo at this point. So that should bring more courage to our communication, you know, actually showing up and speaking up in that way with courage, with that vitality that the Leo energy brings. But the quincunx is kind of saying to me that it's like a separate little thing here. Even though it's connected, like this is going to really sound contradictory, but it's kind of separate, because we know we've got to now go within and understand what we might still need to learn when it comes to getting in alignment with our soul's truth. But we're also using the wisdom of Saturn's time in Aries. So whatever transpires for us during the time that Saturn is in Aries, including the retrograde, is going to show us certain things about our leadership, about where we need to take action, where we want to take action, where we can't take action. And so the time in Pisces is further introspection, as I say, but why can't we do that? Why haven't we been able to own it and be a leader? Okay, so we need to look at that from a soul's truth perspective. And at the same time, but kind of separately, we need to also be building up that courage within our expression to speak up for what we need to. So it's still part of the lesson, it's part of the bigger picture, but we need to almost deal with it separately. So we kind of, what I'm trying to say here is we need to show up and speak up, which is being seen in that way with Mercury and Leo, as well as getting clear with our thoughts in that way, showing up for ourselves in that way. But Saturn in Pisces is going within. So that's why it's kind of like the separate things, even though it's connected. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, we've got to introspect and go within to the soul. And we also need to be ensuring that we are speaking up with courage where we need to in certain situations. And Venus is in Leo at this point as well. So it relates to our values, okay, and our worth, okay? The green triangle I've drawn is a grand water trine, okay, and that is, we've got here, we've got Juno in the mix, okay, obviously Vesta is close by as well. We've got Jupiter and we have got the North Node in Pisces. The cardinal energy here is Cancer, so this is Jupiter. So what drives us forward here in this moment, knowing that Saturn's moving back into Pisces at this point, and we've got this period of time ahead to introspect on the soul's truth, etc., is the hope that Jupiter can bring us. Now, Jupiter expands. So if we can remain hopeful, then this can expand our potential in a positive way. If we're embracing the lessons that we're needing to understand and we're committed to that journey of what Saturn is going to help us work through now he's back in Pisces. And I say committed to because we've got Juno in the mix as well. So we can then expand. It's a trine, it's harmonious. So by having that hope and that nurturing essence, because Cancerian is very nurturing, we need to have that nurturing essence for ourselves of what we need to do here. So it's owning it, but it's doing it in a caring way for ourselves. And it can offer us that expansion and growth if we know that we are following our path, okay, the North Node Pisces. So Saturn in Pisces, at that point, it's only going to be Saturn and the North Node in Pisces. So Saturn is going to get us aligned with our path. So that's a good thing. So there's hope for that. But we need to understand we've got to be committed to this from the depths of the soul and also embrace any transformation that comes from that, as well as understanding what might have been suppressed, why it might have been suppressed, learning the lessons of that, understanding that we've got to be speaking up. We need to show ourselves, but we also need to go within to really do that sort of, I say inner work, it sounds cheesy, but it is about introspection with a retrograde, okay? And Neptune is there as well. So we need to understand what is still being shown to us, but use our discernment, okay? To use our discernment. And that is part of connecting with our intuition as well, because our intuition won't lie to us. So we need to be mindful of that, okay? Fabulous. I think that was the last. Oh, no, it wasn't. It's all right, I'm having a conversation with myself. This one here, I haven't drawn anything on it because when I tried, something weird happened, which obviously meant to me I wasn't meant to. So this is just a bit of a kind of snapshot of Saturn moving into Aries on, for us in the UK, Valentine's Day 2026. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, that is going to be an amazing Valentine's gift for me personally, because he will finally be out of my sign. But I joke about that. I'm making light of that because Saturn is a force to be respected, 100%. Trust me, these lessons over the past few years have been intense, but they are all for the highest good. And he wants us to succeed. That's what Saturn is driven by, success. But he doesn't have emotion, okay? So it can be very harsh because it's like, no, just got to get on with it, okay? So for Pisces, that can be quite tough. So being in that sign can be quite tough collectively for everybody, because we've had to really get in touch with our spiritual truth, like I was saying earlier. But he's bringing structure to that through these lessons, because you're going to learn your lesson. That's what he's saying. You're going to learn your lesson. So this is it. So when he finally makes his move into Aries, then we should be fully aligned with our soul's truth. Okay, that's the goal. And you'll see at the point of ingress back into Aries, we have got an exact conjunction with Neptune. Once again, this conjunction with Neptune, okay? So there is still awakening. There is still lifting of the veil. And there are still karmic cycles closing out, as well as new cycles beginning. Endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings, as I keep saying. And this is very powerful because obviously this is like major energy of a new cycle, a brand new cycle fully for Saturn. Okay, because the other one is really a taster. This is like the new cycle. And Neptune is there to wake people up again. Okay. At this point, we'll be in Aquarius season, and the moon will be in Capricorn. The moon doesn't like it in Capricorn because the moon is ruled by Cancer, which is the opposite sign. But Saturn likes it because Saturn rules Capricorn. So it's like, yeah. Take emotion out of it. This is Aries time. This is go time. Okay. So, and it's almost being committed to that because I see Juno is close by. Okay. So yeah, there could be new kind of like commitments and contracts coming up that's going to now be part of this new cycle for Saturn, okay, moving forward. But in Aquarius season at this point, you know, that is very much about the collective and humanity. So it's a big deal. Major awakenings will continue within the collective, okay? Activations, soul activations, and major awakenings, more lifting of the veil. And now it's about getting us in alignment with the leader that's within us. So his time in Pisces, our spiritual truth, connecting with our intuition, allowing our inner compass to guide us. But you're going to learn how to do that, because if you ain't doing that, you're going to learn. And testing. Well, now in Aries, it's going to be lessons and tests, but in a different way. Let's see how strong you are. Let's see how strong you are to pursue your path. Let's see how strong you are to own who you are. Let's see how strong you are to do things for yourself and not for other people. Okay, lessons, tests. He's going to show you, where are your rules, where are your boundaries, where's your authority in this. Okay, do you want to get things moving or not? He's going to be like, it's going to be a whole new chapter of school, Saturn's school. And the relief from Pisces is big, but we're not immune to this either. Okay, because it's still gonna teach Pisceans, you know, yeah, okay, Saturn's out of our sign, but we've still got to own who we are as well. So he's still going to teach us, but it just might mean that the Aries energy, that's going to be more intense for Aries, you know, and I say that through experience of what's been happening whilst he's been in Pisces. Okay, but take it as it resonates, as always. Okay, we've got free will in this reality, and that's the gift of being here in Earth school, in this 3D reality. We have free will, so this will show the planetary energy. It can give us great indication of why things are playing out the way they are, and of course it can be predictive, but it's the potentiality. It's not saying you have got to do this. It's saying these are the opportunities. This is a chance for healing this. This is a time to get in alignment with your soul's truth, be the leader of your own life. But if you choose not to, that's Saturn's not going to worry about it. So this is the point I'm making. We've got free will. Okay. Now, interestingly, there is the trine, and obviously I couldn't mark this up before for whatever reason, but there is this trine with Lilith, and Lilith is at the final anaretic degree of Scorpio in retrograde. Okay. So yeah, major introspection, but the trine is harmonious. So the shadow aspects we've got to acknowledge. This is all to empower us to move forward as that leader of our own life. But we have to acknowledge those things. We have to be friends with our shadow in that way, to understand why we've suppressed certain things that we've wanted to do. Because if we don't know what to heal, and we don't know what to work through. Okay, so it's very important. But Lilith is a great teacher, just like Saturn. So they are working in harmony at that moment on Valentine's Day for us in the UK. Okay. There we go. And let's bring some light relief to this. I mean, Vertex will be at this point. I mean, this is just a marker point, okay, but this can represent fate and destiny. But Vertex in Gemini, okay, so it gives us that sort of almost destined moment at that point, okay, to be looking at things from a different perspective, and to say, okay, Saturn's in Aries now, let's look at this, let's be a bit logical about it, because that will align with the Saturn energy as well, you know, rather than the feelings side of it. But also, let's be curious about it. Let's not be harsh on ourselves. This is about discovering what we need to understand and being open to that. It feels like there's a need to be open to what we're going to discover during his time in Aries. And furthermore, you know, past Fortuna, the pot of fortune is in Sag. So that is learning and discovery. So success comes from that discovery and being open enough to discover what we need to discover. So it's all for our highest good. Okay. There we are. Right, I'll leave it there. Okay. So I'm wishing you all the best for this upcoming period. I mean, I might do another astrology video to go into it in a bit more detail in terms of when he moves back into Pisces, and also perhaps when he starts his retrograde in Aries, because that's going to give us that sort of message, that theme at the time of the retrograde starting, which can give us a theme on the introspection that's needed. So I might do that, and then also when he moves back into Pisces, which I have shown you, but I can cover that again, and then a bit more detail about when he does finally move into Aries next February, just to kind of like focus on the Saturnian lessons and the themes that might be around that, of course. So yeah, I hope it resonates. If it resonates, I hope it helps in whatever way. We're all meant to be here to help each other. Again, let's be kind. Let's help each other through this journey of self-discovery, detaching from old cycles, and this elevation of the collective consciousness. At the end of the day, this is what's happening. So if we can align with that, in terms of our own journey, and we are maximizing our own potential, this is going to have a ripple effect for humanity in a positive way. Okay. But intuition is key, because there's a lot of distractions out there at the moment. So you need to be mindful of that and use your discernment at all times. Okay. Sending you love and blessings, and I'll see you soon.